Welcome to OLC 4.0, Term 2B, Class 21. Today we're looking at assignments 30 and 31, which are the beginning of Unit 3, and we're also looking a little bit more at suffixes. Today is May 21st, and I am Jillian Percy. Here are, as always, all the ways to contact us. The studio number is 1-800-465-7144. The office phone number is 1-800-667-3703. My extension is 2211. If you want to send me an email, jillian.percy@nnec.on.ca. My alternate email, which people sometimes use when they're sharing Google Documents with me, is jillian.percy@nnecschools.org. Sometimes people like to reach out to me on Facebook. My name there is G. Percy, space Wassa, and you'll see like a little fall scene and a little avatar of me in like a little black and red dress there. If you send me a friend request there, please also send me a message letting me know what your full name is, what course you're taking, and what assignment you're working on that you want help with. If you're wanting to look at previous classes, there are two different YouTube channels you can check out. One is the school channel, Wassa Distance Education YouTube channel, that has all the courses from the beginning of the year from all the teachers. The one thing it doesn't have is this term's OLC 40 course. It has term 1, which is the September-October one. If you want the current one that I'm doing right now, which is kind of the April, May, June, then you need to go to my channel, which is the G. Percy Wassa channel, and go to the OLC 40 Term 2B. Term 1A is September. Now, like I said, there's not really a significant difference between the two. I'm covering the exact same assignments. Sometimes I change a little bit how I teach the grammar, or I cover a little bit more one day than the next, but it's not a huge difference, but just in case you get used to following one rather than the other. Okay, my most common question is, how do I hand in assignments? There are a lot of different ways you can hand in assignments. First of all, you can give it to the DEC at the Learning Center and ask them to scan it and send it to me. When you do that, make sure to hang on to your originals. You will need them for the portfolio project at the end of the unit. You can also fax things to me, 1-800-463-7852, that's from Ontario, or 1-877-990-2023, that's if you're in the rest of Canada. You can email it to me with the assignment as an attachment. When you do that, send me the email to studentwork@nnec.on.ca. Now, the reason you send it there instead of my main email is because that's kind of where we send all our assignments. And the secretary always checks that, prints things out, puts it in my mailbox, logs that it's been submitted. So it just kind of is like a secondary check to make sure that everybody knows that it came in. The other thing is, if anything were to happen to me or another teacher took over this course, or you want to continue it next year and a new teacher was teaching it, we can still access your work. Whereas if it's only in my email, no one else can access my email. So it just kind of gives it more range, basically. Make sure that on the physical assignment you have your full name, the course name, the assignment number, and the name right on the page. I know a lot of people put it on the email, but I don't see the email usually, right? It gets printed off and put in my mailbox. If it asks for a rough and a good draft, please make sure both of those get handed in and that they're labeled so I know. If you only hand one in, like if it's a rough draft and you're wanting feedback, let me know. Like put a little note at the bottom saying, hey, here's my rough draft. Let me know what you think so that I can talk to you about it. Otherwise, I just kind of take a random guess and hope for the best. Okay? Like I said, some people share documents with me through Google Docs. When you do that, make sure to include me as someone who can edit or view. Otherwise, I won't be able to do anything to open the link. You can mail it, but it's not the best way to do it. It takes too long. Some people also take photographs of their assignments. You have to be careful when you do that. The photograph has to be really clear and easy for me to read. Don't put like 4 or 5 photos on one page. I won't be able to see that. Okay, it won't open up nice and big and clear. If you're just kind of taking it on your phone and then sharing it with me, make sure to send it as an attachment rather than as the actual body of the email. When it comes as the body, it opens up in a really strange size and I have to kind of really play around with it to get it back down to the regular size. You can also download a scanner app on your phone and then use that to take pictures. It actually works way better than just taking photographs, because it's designed to take documents, make documents look nice and crisp. Obviously, I use Adobe Scan. It's free. It's a reliable company. You can use whatever scanner app you want. Download it onto your phone, open it up, and then you just kind of pose it over your assignment, just like you're taking a picture. For Adobe Scan, they've got little blue dots that kind of line up with your corners that you can play with if you need to. You can also adjust the borders, like if you accidentally got a little bit of the table on or something. And then you keep repeating those 2 steps over and over until you've got all the pages scanned. Hit continue, and now it lets you preview everything before you go on. You can reorder the pages. You can retake a photograph if it didn't work out. If you're happy with it, hit Save PDF, give it a name, and then save it wherever you save your things, Google Drive, Dropbox, or whatever, and then send it to me as an attachment. Okay, we are currently in week 6 of this 9-week course. One thing to remember is that the last day of term is June 13th. Usually we only accept exams on that day, and this course does not have an exam. So generally the last day we accept assignments is June 12th. This course, instead of an exam, has a long culminating activity. It's going to take you, I estimate, between 5 to 10 hours. And I'm giving you a wide range because I don't know how quickly you write or how many versions you write. Some people will write 1 version and they're happy. Some people write 5, okay? Kind of depends, and I don't want to assume anything. I do suggest that you do not leave that assignment to the last day. It will be very difficult to complete, especially if you are already working full-time or maybe at home taking care of young children all day. You want to give yourself plenty of time to do this. I would say at least a week, but you might want more. Generally, once you start Unit 4, ask me for the culminating activity so I can give it to you ahead of time. You've got plenty of time to work on it because it really is worth 20% of your overall grade, which means it can raise your marks from like a D to a B if you do well on it. So it's kind of important. Don't skip it. If you are a potential grad for this June, in other words, you are one of our students who's finished all their courses, maybe this is your last course, or this one and maybe another course that you're almost finished, make sure you get everything in by about May 30th. That isn't a hard deadline, but it takes me a long time to do all the marking. I have a huge stack of marking right now. I currently have 134 students. There is no way I can complete all the marking in one day if everybody decides to leave it to June 13th. Okay, so get it in early as much as you can. Generally, the best bet is hand everything you've done in on Friday, or if you're the type that does all your work on the weekends, hand over whatever you've done in on the weekend in on Monday. Okay, don't wait for an entire unit. It's actually way harder for me to mark a whole unit at once. If you're running so far behind that you're like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to get finished this, then go ahead and enroll in the summer version of the course and continue your work then. There are no live classes in the summertime, but I will be doing the marking. And here is what you would do. You would go over to Facebook, and you can see we've got a Facebook page there, WASA Distance Education Center. And there's one little post there about the online application for WASA. And if you click on that, it will bring you to the summer registration page, okay? If you're having trouble with that, or if your internet isn't great, you can also call the office and tell them that you want to enroll. You don't have to wait until summertime to do that. That way I kind of know ahead of time who I've got going into the summer course. You can still keep on handing things in to me, and that doesn't really change anything as far as that goes, okay? Okay, today's learning goals. By the end of today's class and assignments, I will use appropriate strategies to expand my vocabulary through understanding suffix endings and how they change the meaning of a word. Explain how the form of a graphic text helps the reader to understand the information or message. Make connections between personal experiences and the context of text to consolidate and extend understanding of different types of text, including graphic texts. Demonstrate my understanding of a variety of texts commonly read in daily life. Use my knowledge of the organizational structure of a variety of texts to identify the purpose, locate information, and find pertinent details. I can also use appropriate strategies to organize my ideas and information for writing, and use appropriate strategies to revise and edit my work. Okay, so we are going to start off with suffixes. Sorry, kind of does not trip off my tongue. We started talking about that yesterday. Suffixes are just basically a little, not exactly a word, but letters that we add at the end of a word that change its meaning and may change its parts of speech. So yesterday we talked a lot about adjectives that got changed into nouns, I believe. And today we're talking about a whole variety, basically. Sometimes we can add suffixes to a noun and it creates a new form of the noun. So the words ship or hood are some examples of suffixes we add to the end. So like friend, if we add the suffix ship, it ends up talking about a relationship, which I know already is a ship one, right? Friend versus friendship. Our friendship is very long. So a friend would be one person. Friendship is the idea of how we're related, right? Partner versus a partnership. Partner would be one person or maybe several persons. Partnership is that concept of that relationship. We are in partnership with a major organization. Dictator versus dictatorship. Some people say that the United States is becoming a dictatorship, right? And then hood. Hoods are, we can add to the end of a noun to show groupings of things. Might be groups of people, groups of areas, or even periods of time. So a priest, we can add hood and it becomes priesthood. Like entering the priesthood is a very serious commitment. Neighbor. Our neighborhood is thankfully very quiet. So the place where all the neighbors are gathered, right? Child and childhood. My childhood was a fun and productive time. The grouping of a period of time of our childhood. Same thing for adult. Adulthood comes with a lot of responsibility. Then we can add shun, which could be spelled Tion or Sion, to form nouns from verbs. Okay. Sometimes the spelling will change to modify things a little bit, or we might change a consonant sound so it sounds a little bit more natural. There are certain sounds that kind of roll off our tongue more easily, and we tend to change words to basically make it easier for our mouth to say it. I don't know the way to put it. So inform can become information, decide, decision, describe, description, multiply, multiplication, admit, admission, educate, education. Okay, so that's kind of an example of how you can change it. Basically, it's because you're wanting to talk about the concept of that action, right? Okay, and then sometimes a suffix is used to indicate gender. This is kind of one of those grammar points that's becoming a little more controversial, as a lot of people would prefer more gender neutral terms. However, you will still see this sometimes, so it's good to know the meanings. Generally, if you see the form SESS added to the end of a word, it changes the word from male to female. So actor is a male, actress is a female. Waiter is a male, waitress, female. Steward, stewardess. Priest becomes priestess. A duke becomes a duchess. That changes a little bit there. Master goes to mistress. Postmaster to postmistress. I wrote obsolete. We generally wouldn't use that particular phraseology these days. Heir to heiress. Heir is somebody who inherits a whole bunch of money. Host to hostess. That's one of those ones that it developed kind of a weird connotation, a little bit sexual, so it's kind of fallen out of use. The idea being somebody would host a party. Lion versus lioness. You may still see that one being used in like biology books. All right, what else have we got here? Sometimes we can add a suffix to a verb to indicate the name of a person who does that particular verb generally for a living. Like somebody who assists is called an assistant. So we use ANT or ENT at the end of the word to indicate that it's talking about a person now. So someone who studies becomes a student. Someone who consults becomes a consultant. Someone who does accounting, accountant. Someone who serves, a servant. Someone who participates in something is a participant. Keep in mind, not all words that end with ant are automatically a person. Like if I say important, that's not a person. Another suffix that can be added to a verb to make a noun is ist, ist, or or. So florist, dentist, journalist, that ist is telling you it's a person. Same thing with doctor, governor, ad auditor, or author. Okay? And then we can add y to a noun to turn it into an adjective. Sun can become sunny, wind becomes windy, fun becomes funny, run, runny, fuzz, fuzzy, fog, foggy, chill, and chilly. So I wanted to show you how it sounds different. Like I see the sun, it's a noun. It is a sunny day. There it's an adjective. The wind is strong. The windy weather is making it cold. Camping is fun. Some movies are very funny. Be careful the syrup doesn't run down the table. I don't like runny eggs. There is some white fuzz on my black sweater. My teddy bear feels fuzzy. And then we can add ly to an adjective to turn it into an adverb. Okay, this is really common. So quick becomes quickly, slow becomes slowly, happy becomes happily, sad becomes sadly, deep, deeply, mean, meanly. Keep in mind, this will not work for every single adjective that exists. I can't, for example, turn fast into fastly. That just isn't a regular word in English. If you're not sure, that's the kind of thing you would automatically just check in a dictionary, okay? Again, I'm going to show you how it sounds differently because these are words that are really easily mixed up by people. Sometimes people will try and use the adjective quick and use it as an adverb, like I ran quick. Nope, I ran quickly. Okay, the quick flight takes an hour. Mom said to run quickly home. So one is describing the flight, one is describing the action. A slow holiday is peaceful. Write slowly to be more neat. Again, one's describing the day, one's describing the action of writing. The happy boy said thanks. She smiled happily at her gookum. Memorials can be sad. He walked home sadly. A deep hole is needed for a tree. Dig deeply to reach the treasure. The mean old man yelled at the kids. I hate you, she said meanly. So you see how there's that difference between when it's being used as an adjective to describe a thing or being used as an adverb to describe an action. Some other common suffixes that you may see in English, ful, being full of something, careful, helpful, beautiful, pitiful, sorrowful. Less would be like without, so careless, helpless, pitiless, fearless, homeless. ER is when you're comparing two things, neater, softer, meaner, tougher, taller, shorter. EST is if you're comparing three or more things. One is the most, the neatest, the softest, the toughest, the tallest. IOUS or just OUS, it's characterized by. Jealous, the characterization of being jealous of, I'm not sure how to put that one. Anxious, suspicious. ERY is a place to work, like a bakery, a brewery, a tannery. And then ism would be a philosophy or a doctrine, like feminism, communism, liberalism, humanism. Sorry. All right, so we're going to be moving on to looking at graphic texts and how we can make connections with them, show our understanding of them, and use our knowledge of how they're organized to find out different kinds of information. So we are on lesson 11. We already did a bunch of work with visuals and graphics in Unit 2, right? We talked about symbols and advertising. This is kind of the final lesson. I don't know why it didn't go into the first unit, but we're finishing up here apparently. This final lesson will focus on charts or graphs and maps, which give readers a lot of information without using a lot of words. So most people, including students, are visual learners. On a circle or a pie graph, it would look, and sorry, put it down over here, like this. Visual learners are the blue. All the other learning styles combined are the red, right? Most people learn best visually. The other types of learning, by the way, in case you're curious, are auditory, learning best by hearing, kinesthetic, learning best through doing things, and tactile, learning best through hands-on activities. Tactile and kinesthetic are very similar, right? Kinesthetic would be something like learning how to play baseball really best, not by watching somebody or hearing an explanation, but by just diving right in and doing it. Tactile would be sort of learning as you're doing something with your hands, thinking of things like woodwork or needlework or that kind of idea, right? There's a lot of crossover, obviously. Oh, computers, for example, used to be far more text-based, where you had to read things and memorize a bunch of codes, but then they switched at a certain point in time to becoming more visual, more icon-based, because people just found them way easier to use once they did that. Okay, so assignment 30 is interpreting visuals. So we're going to be looking at basically graphs and maps here, just for an example of some visuals that we haven't looked at so far. Let me see here. If you look at the second page in your novel, you will see a table of contents. You can skim or scan the page to find out what the different chapters are called and on which pages they begin. Can you imagine if that were written out in sentence form, like, go to page 30 for interpreting visuals? It would take you much longer to locate the chapter you're looking for, and it would probably be all crammed and disorganized on the page. So we have to be thankful for visuals. They really often are easier to read. Charts or graphs and maps allow readers to understand information quickly and efficiently and to draw conclusions based on the data they see. So you are going to use the skills you've learned about visuals to answer the following questions. Okay, first of all maps have titles. There is a map on page 4 which is missing a title, which makes it difficult to understand the information presented. Skim and scan the names on the map. Think about your prior knowledge and come up with a good name for the map. Give that map a title. Important. Remember that your title should not be so vague that it doesn't tell what information the map is giving you. So do not write to me map of Ontario. I will not take it. Okay? Here are some examples of other maps and what they show. So this is what we call a topographical map, and that means that it shows how high the land is compared to sea level. So sea level would be like these blue lakes here, and the parts that are light green are the lowest, right, between 0 to 100 meters, and then there's a brighter green that's 100 to 200, and then there's a kind of a dirty green, I don't know, with 200 to 300. Brown is 300 to 500, and then the kind of pinkish brown, those are the tallest parts that are close to 700 meters tall. Okay, so if I was saying this, I wouldn't just say map of Ontario. I might say topographical map of Ontario, or elevation map of Ontario, or terrain map. There's more than one way to put it, but I would make it clear what it's trying to teach me about Ontario, not just tell me that it's Ontario. Okay, this is the map that you have. Okay, so look at what it is and think about what is it teaching us. One thing to think about is what information is on this map and what types of information are not on this map that you might be used to seeing on a map. Okay. Number 2, something else is missing from this map, and that is what's called a compass rose. A compass rose shows you which direction is north. In the case of most maps, including the one we have here, the north is usually straight up the top of the page, and south is straight down. East is usually to your right, and west is to your left. They want you to draw a compass rose on your map. There's an example of kind of a complicated one. You can look for simpler ones, but make sure you get all the directions in there, like northeast, southeast, southwest, and northwest as well. Okay? Don't just include the north, south, east, west. Okay, number 3. In at least 2 sentences, describe the location of your home community. Use words such as north, south. Pretend that someone is planning a trip to see you. Remember, we're not using words like right, left, up, or down. The whole point is using the map directions, right? So we're deliberately using directional words. This is one of those ones that sometimes people find really hard. So my home community is down here in Windsor. If I was trying to describe to somebody how to get there, I might explain it like this. Go to the southernmost tip of Ontario. So here's Ontario, there's the southernmost tip. Find Lake Erie, there's Lake Erie. Go west from Lake Erie until you reach Windsor. So that would be it. I could also say something like, go southeast along Highway 1117, heading towards Toronto. When you get to Toronto, turn southwest and head towards Windsor. So there isn't just one right way to give directions, but just make sure you're using map words, not left and right words. Also, remember that when you're giving people directions on how to get somewhere, you need to give them a starting point, right? You could use Thunder Bay or Sioux Lookout or Kenora or Pickle Lake as starting points. If I was telling someone how to get to from Sioux Lookout to Kenora, I might say something like this. Take Highway 72 out of Sioux Lookout, driving southwest. At Dinorvik, turn left and head west for about 30 minutes to get to Dryden. So I want to say turn left and head west. Those are the same things, but I'm sort of indicating which way you're doing, right? Okay, part 2 is looking at the bar graph. This is the bar graph. Whenever you're looking at the bar graph, you want to read the titles. So the title up top is age. The title down here is age in years, 0 to 19 years, 20 to 64 years, 65 plus years. Over here, we've got the percentage of the population. It starts at 0 and goes up to 70%. And then over here, we've got a little legend. The darker bars count as the Aboriginal, and then the lighter gray bar counts as non-Aboriginal people. So the questions are going to be about this particular bar graph, okay? Number 4, according to the graph, approximately what percentage of the population over the age of 65 is Indigenous? So I would go over here, I'd find the Indigenous Aboriginal people, over 65. Now I've got a problem. It doesn't go all the way up to 10. Sometimes people will try and round off and tell me 10 or round off and tell me 0, but you really can't do that. You're going to have to kind of think, what number is halfway between 0 and 10? And give me a good guess and write that down, okay? Number 5, what percentage of the population under the age of 20 is Indigenous? And then number 6, use the graph to make 2 statements which compare the Indigenous population to the non-Indigenous population. An example of one comparative statement would be, there are more non-Indigenous people between the ages of 20 and 64. You want to use words like more, fewer, most, least. If you're comparing 2 groups, you would say something has more than or something has less than. If you're comparing 1 group out of 3 or more groups, you would say the most is or the least is. Okay. Here's a different graph talking about the population of the United States. This one is comparing males to females. And here are some example statements of what I might say. The population overall of both male and females was lowest in the year 1985. The population overall of both male and females was highest in the year 2010, which would be as high as that goes. It would obviously be more now. The female population was consistently higher, I forgot to put, than the male every year that it is listed. Isn't that interesting? There's always a little bit more females than there are males. I don't know why. Oh, this one is not true. Taking that out. Oh, I think I probably meant to say lower. Sorry. The male population is consistently lower every year that it is listed. And then I could give very specific things. I'm not going to go on. You get the idea, right? Okay, so that wraps up assignment 30. So then we're going to move on to 31. 31 is us basically doing a journal about what we've learned about visuals, okay? So the last several lessons, which includes what we learned in Unit 2, have focused on visuals. In this journal, please write about how specific visuals help us more effectively understand what we read. Please be very specific in your body sentences. Your opening and your closing sentences can be general because they're trying to get across a big idea. But the rest of your sentences should be very detailed with specific examples of how a certain visual gets used in different reading formats. Your paragraph should be at least 6 to 7 sentences long. It should follow good paragraph structure with an opening statement on the topic, 4 to 5 body sentences that give specific examples and details, and then a closing sentence that provides a conclusion or a summary. No rough copy is needed for this assignment, just the good copy can be handed in. Okay, so remember that when you're writing a journal, or really anything, your opening sentence, it's fine for it to be general, and probably it's a good idea, because then it allows you to discuss a whole bunch of different specific visuals. An example might be something like, visuals can be a great way to add extra information to the text. You can do any kind of variation of what you picture. Then you can explain by giving lots of detailed examples. But I couldn't use that sentence as a body paragraph. I'll have a lot of people say some variation of this over and over again in their body paragraph. Visuals are great. Visuals are helpful. I love visuals. No, I can't take that, guys. You've got to be specific, okay? The other thing is I've occasionally, I don't know why, for this specific journal, I get a lot of plagiarism. I don't know why. I have a lot of people will just copy different lines from the assignment and slip it in there and hope that I won't notice. This has been done often enough that now I do notice, and I will send it back to you and ask you to do it over. So please don't try. It's become a really common thing, I think, because people find this one really hard. Here's an example of a poorly done paragraph. So this is what not to do, because I've plagiarized some stuff and I've been very vague, okay? So here I'm going to give you an example of how it sounds. Visuals can be a great way to add extra information to text. Visuals add to our understanding of material. They make the material we're going through more interesting. Charts and graphs help us in our everyday lives. They help us figure things out at a glance. Visuals are very useful. I always like to see visuals in things I read because it helps me understand. So the two things that I highlighted here in the yellow and the orange, those are plagiarized. They're a direct copy of last year's assignment information, right? Because it said this basically. I have since taken that out, but people just kind of split that into two different sentences and put it in there. The third sentence in orange, was from an earlier section in the assignment. And then the pink section is from another section entirely, including the at a glance part, okay? So the middle has all been taken from somewhere else. You can't use it. This part is very vague, but that's okay because it would be the closing sentence. But the middle part I would have to get completely rid of because all I've done is copy things from the assignment. I need you to give me exact examples from your own ideas, okay? So don't talk about visuals in general. Pick a visual and talk about that specific visual in ways that you specifically find it helpful. Some examples of visuals that we've discussed so far are things like photographs, drawings or illustrations of fictional events, maps, graphs. We've looked at road signs, material warning labels, emojis, advertising, okay? You could use any one of these, brainstorm when you might see them and how they might be helpful. So here's an example. I just kind of started this, obviously don't use mine, but photographs, they appear in newspapers to show us what an event or a news might look like. For example, war photos or a protest crowd with signs. Drawings can be used in science textbooks to help us picture a concept that's new, like the rain cycle, or maybe a picture of an atom because we can't see it with our regular eyes. Oh. Remember to use our paragraph format. So we start with a general statement, and then we have at least 3 to 5 detail sentences that tell us something specific about visuals or whatever the topic is, and then a concluding sentence that kind of restates things. So here is some examples, okay? You're not going to use this exactly, but it's an example. Some types of text may have material that is hard to picture because we are unfamiliar with the topic. A history textbook can be made much more interesting to read with the help of photographs that show us older houses, clothes, and transportations. Ads and posters from different time periods can help us understand their lifestyles, current events, issues, prices, and other things. Maps could help us understand distances between places or population changes or shipping routes. So here I picked one type of reading material and then talked about a bunch of different visuals that might help make it more interesting. You could do it that way, or you could pick one type of visual and talk about different reading formats it might be used in and how it might help each one of those. Okay. Now I got really detailed, and that's just because I wanted to kind of show you how detailed you can get. Okay. So if you aren't sure what I mean by vague and general is things like, I like seeing visuals when I read. Like, what kind of visuals? Why? What's the reason? Visuals help us understand what we read better. Really? How? How do they help us understand? What type of reading? Okay. Here I'm getting more specific. I find visuals such as graphs helpful for understanding data, right? I gave you a specific visual and I explained how it was helpful to help me understand data. Here's another example. Visuals, like maps, can help us understand distances between places, population expansion, or natural resource locations. Some useful transition words or phrases for the body of your paragraph, things like in addition, additionally, also, as well, furthermore. Charts, so here's an example. In addition, charts can help us see information in an organized way. Additionally, charts can help us see information in an organized way. This is just a way to make your writing sound smoother. So a lot of times when people are doing run-on sentences where they're just kind of stringing a bunch of sentences together with commas, they're trying to make it sound smoother, right? The comma is a wrong way to do it. The right way to do it is to use these kinds of transition words and phrases because it gives your reader a heads up. Hey, I'm giving more information on the same topic, right? I could say, for example, here's another example, that kind of idea too, right? It's just kind of giving your reader little clues, I guess. Here are some other helpful sentence starters. Another example is, for instance, one sample might be, a case in point is, one case might be. So here's how it would sound in an actual sentence. One example is when newspapers used graphs to show COVID information around the world so we could see where the illness was worst. A case in point is when they use symbols of men and women on bathroom doors so that even people who can't read can find the right bathroom, right? Like you've seen that. Even small children who can't read, 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds, can look up, see the icon, and know which way to go. If I were to go to another country, that would help me there. Like I wouldn't be able to necessarily read, say, the Turkish word for man or woman. But if they have icons on the door, I would know which one is which. Okay. Remember to end your sentence, your paragraph, with a great concluding sentence. A concluding sentence should restate your main idea in a new and interesting way. Some ways that people do this, they summarize their main points in brief phrases. They state an overall opinion on the topic. They end with some sort of interesting image. Sometimes they create a call to action that invites the reader's response. Probably not what we're going to do here. Sometimes they'll ask a thought-provoking or a rhetorical question. A rhetorical question is a question that you aren't necessarily looking for an answer to. You're just trying to get somebody to think. So If I said something like, boy, aren't you glad we didn't decide to go out today since it's raining? Like I'm asking a question, but I'm not really looking for an answer, right? It's rhetorical. Now, I've said that you don't need to hand in a rough draft and a final draft, but you really should consider doing one for yourself because taking the time to polish up your writing and making it the best it can be can often increase your grade significantly. I have seen people easily jump from a C to a B or even a B to an A. Things to always look at before you hand in. And this would take like a minute or two. Does it make sense? Read it out loud and hear it. If you've forgotten words, it sounds so much more obvious when you read it out loud. Is each sentence clear, interesting, and useful? In other words, are you just saying the same thing over and over again, or are you saying something new each time? Aim for something new. Have I avoided run-on sentences? If you are writing a sentence, putting a comma, writing a sentence, putting a comma, writing a sentence, putting a comma, stop, take out those commas, and put a period instead. Have you used transition words and phrases to help the flow of the paragraph and make it easier to read? If you haven't yet, I honestly encourage you to. I look for them, but also they just make your writing sound so much better and so much more professional. Have I checked for cups? Cups is the acronym for whenever we're editing. Capitalization errors, usage errors, punctuation errors, and spelling errors. Okay? So we've got a little bit of time. So I didn't think I'd have time, so I was going to go on to something else, but we're gonna talk about something real kind of quick. So I just kind of wanted to give you a bit of a trigger warning. We're getting to the spot where we're probably about halfway through the book. Chapter 6 is coming up. It is a bit intense, and I wanted to warn you. It can be hard to read due to the emotional issues it raises up because suicide is one of the topics, okay? If you think that you will find reading that chapter too triggering, please feel free to skip that particular chapter, okay? I don't ask any specific questions on. It will come up again later. But you can also stop listening to this video if you don't want to hear me read about chapter 6, okay? I'm not going to talk about any more assignments after this. I'm just going to talk about chapter 6 a little bit. Please, I'm going to give you a list of numbers after this. If anybody is feeling sad, depressed, or struggling with thoughts of self-harm or suicide, please don't struggle alone. Please reach out for help. Obviously, in your own community, you can talk to the nursing station. I know a lot of people reach out to elders or to band counselors. There are usually mental health workers or note-in workers that you can talk to, but here are some other helplines in case you're not wanting to talk to any of those particular people. There was one called the Hope for Wellness Helpline. This offers immediate help to all Indigenous people across Canada. It is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Oh, where is the phone number gone to? Hang on a second. There it is. 1-855-242-3310. There's also an online chat, www.hopeforwellness.ca. Then there's another one called Talk for Healing. This one is specifically designed for Indigenous women. I apologize to the men out there, but that's what it's designed for. But it's also available in 14 different Indigenous languages all across Ontario. That one is 1-855-554-HEAL. And then there is the Métis Nation of Ontario's Healing and Wellness branch. They also offer a 24-hour mental health and addictions crisis line. That one's only available in English and French. Once you've been connected to them, they also offer other services. That's 1-877-767-7572. Then there's the ETAG Healing Lodge and Learning Center, 705-534-3724. And then in Fort Frances, there's the Tribal Area Health Services, 807-271-0194. And obviously, if you live in town, you can always call 911. You can go down to Minoyawin. There is Note-in Services in town. So again, don't suffer alone. Don't be embarrassed. Everybody has times where they're sad or depressed. And lots of people have struggled with thoughts of self-harm or suicide. So reach out, get help, and find somebody to talk to. Please, please, please. All right. I am going to quickly grab the information on chapter 6. I'd kind of gotten rid of it and then I decided to put it back in here. Okay, so Jimmy thinks about the teacher Quintel. He's kind of surprised because the kids at school really like her. She plays sports and activities after school with them, and she's very patient with those who are having trouble at school. She's willing to talk to the kids about any problems they have. She doesn't tolerate anyone fooling around in her class. She brings food in on Fridays, and she manages to talk to Jimmy into taking some homework home a few times. Then a big snowstorm starts to come in and the lake is beginning to ice over. Jimmy is really looking forward to taking his skidoo out on the ice. His friend Gary seems to be avoiding him ever since he refused to get involved in selling drugs with him. Gary refuses to answer the door when he tries to visit him. He calls him names and he tells him to get out of the way. Jimmy is determined not to get in trouble with the cops because he really doesn't want to go back in jail. He hated it there, okay? He does find himself missing the drugs and the alcohol, though. A couple of times he even tried sniffing gas again, and once he even tries getting back together with one of the girls he did drugs with at the cabin, but he doesn't really find her interesting anymore, and he doesn't really find that he wants to do those things as much anymore. He stops going to school for a little while, but when he does, his teacher Quintel comes to get him and basically kind of makes him come to school. He isn't really happy about it, but he goes along with it because he doesn't want to upset his grandmother because he loves her very much and he knows that she loves him. Finally, Jimmy decides to go have a talk with Gary. So this chapter also goes into a lot of detail about Gary's home life, which is really not good. Gary got involved with drugs, gas, and alcohol by about grade 7. And this chapter makes it clear that he seems to be almost permanently damaged by the substance abuse. It seems to make it really hard for him to think. He feels a lot of despair over his own life. So Gary is trying to talk Jimmy into helping him bring in drugs from Thompson to sell to make more money. Jimmy tries to explain that he really doesn't want to do this because he doesn't want to go to jail, but Gary doesn't really take that seriously. He's mostly focused on all the money they can make. I want to point out this is in part because Gary has somehow become the breadwinner. He's the one bringing home the money. His parents are not doing that anymore. Gary talks about thoughts of suicide and the people who've done it, and he really talks about how bad things are at home. They're very broke. His mom's got diabetes. She's getting a lot sicker, and they never have enough food. And then after they finish talking, Jimmy just kind of falls asleep out there on the dock. So this is a sad chapter, and to be honest, there's a few sad chapters over the next little bit. Okay? So we are going to wrap up. Today is Wednesday. Tomorrow is our last class for the week. If you are having difficulties, please reach out to me so that I can help you with whatever you need with the assignment. And I will be here tomorrow. And send me an email if you want some help. Take care and have a good evening.
Record.